Anyway. Okay, so. Oh yeah, shit. Sorry, I was just trying to figure out what
Someone tried to secretly record Tucker Carlson,
Hold on,
but
let me-
ended up capturing an unexpected moment instead.
I didn't know you could fish here.
You can?
You can?
Yeah.
What are you fishing for?
Are you videotaping me?
Yeah,
Why?
because you're in public. I can.
Well, I know you can.
Okay.
I'm not challenging your right. I just
Okay.
want to know why you
I find it interesting that you're fishing in Central Park.
Oh, yeah, it's absolutely allowed.
Okay. And what do you use for bait?
I fly fish, so I use flies. I'll show you.
Oh, those are the things you make.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, the string. I'm stupid. I don't fly fish.
It's all right. Most people don't.
Oh, okay.
See, and you tie them.
You
and
tie your own flies?
I do, yeah.
You do? Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in California.
Yeah, you did a lot of fly fishing out there?
Not really.
No?
But I learned in later life, and it's a great pleasure and a great sport.
It's like relaxing, right?
Very.
What should we watch, guys?
Live in New York now?
No. Well, I do live here part-time, actually.
Okay.
The fuck is going on? Come on.
Good morning, everybody. Happy first 100 days.
Crap is
Before
this
we begin,
quality?
I want to acknowledge
Crap.
that the bipartisan Take It
that's
Down
it?
Act passed the
Holy
House last
dog
night.
shit.
This important legislation was championed and guided through Congress by our wonderful First Lady, Melania Trump, including through her direct advocacy on behalf of survivors during her passage, the passage efforts. The Take It Down Act criminalizes the publication of non-consensual intimate imagery and requires social media and similar websites to remove such content within 48 hours of notice from a victim. The First Lady thanks all those who voted in favor of this important legislation, and the President looks forward to signing it when it arrives on his desk. Today officially marks 100 days of promises made and promises kept by President Trump. This has truly been the most historic start to a presidency in American history. After building the greatest economy in the world in his first term as president, President Trump is in the process of doing that all over again. The American people trust in President Trump. Since his first day in office, President Trump has focused on defeating the Biden inflation crisis, bringing down the cost of living, and making the United States the best place in the world to do business, invest, create jobs, and innovate. And President Trump's efforts are working. 345,000 jobs have already been added since the start of President Trump's term.
That's okay, but we don't
Last
need
month's
jobs.
jobs report saw
We don't care
nearly
about jobs.
100,000 more jobs than economists predicted, and it was the fourth highest month for private payroll growth in the past 2 years. 9,000 manufacturing jobs have been added to the economy already. This is a sharp contrast to the 6,000 manufacturing jobs that were lost each month in the final 2 years of the Biden administration.
Yep.
The U.S. employment rate remains at historic lows. And thanks to President Trump, Americans are seeing price relief for the first time in years. The last inflation report showed the first consumer price decline since the COVID pandemic, a decrease in energy prices, and real average hourly wage growth. President Trump is delivering on his promises to lower costs for American families and businesses. Prices across the board for everyday goods have seen declines since this president was inaugurated. From airfare to used motor vehicles to prescription drugs, prices are dropping. In fact, last month's drop in the price of prescription drugs was the largest ever recorded. And after Joe Biden botched the response to the bird flu, President Trump and Secretary Rollins' aggressive plan have brought down wholesale egg prices more than 50% from Inauguration Day. President Trump ended Joe Biden's reckless war on American energy and fossil fuels and has restored American energy dominance. And Secretary Wright, Secretary Doug Burgum are working hard on that effort every single day.
Yep.
Oil and gas prices are now way down because of this bold approach. Gasoline prices down 7%. Energy prices are also down as well. The Department of Interior just announced a new offshore drilling policy that will boost oil production in the Gulf of America by 100,000 barrels per day. On the deregulation front, President Trump is committed to cutting senseless red tape, especially for America's small business owners who are the backbone of our economy. We know cutting regulation leads to lower costs and higher growth. The mass deregulation effort by this administration will help usher in the golden age of America, which is underway. Immediately upon taking office, President Trump blocked all of the unfinalized Biden-era rules, saving Americans more than $100 billion, or $2,100 per family of four over the next decade. And the president also launched a bold multi-agency effort to roll back existing federal regulations that drive up the cost of living on hardworking families. This effort is projected to yield significant cost savings in the coming months, including the EPA's rollback of tailpipe emission rules for light-duty and medium-duty vehicles and the Department of Transportation's latest corporate average fuel economy standards. These two efforts alone yield $755 billion in total savings, or more than $8,800 per family of four over the next decade. In total, the combined savings from all of these actions equal just over $935 billion, or nearly $11,000 in real savings per family of four per the coming decade. The press is not talking nearly enough about the positive impact of President Trump's deregulation campaign. And investments from the biggest companies and countries in the world are pouring in under this president. So far, total investment commitments under the Trump administration have reached more than $5 trillion, including $500 billion from Apple in U.S.-based manufacturing and training, $500 billion from NVIDIA in AI infrastructure, $100 billion from TSMC and U.S.-based chips manufacturing, and the $500 billion private investment by OpenAI, Oracle, and SoftBank.
hours away and sit at a pizza place by herself. Oh, yeah. Happy, very happy.
God, you never heard of like the high road? Take that.
She was out on the high road about 6 months ago, so, you sound really proud of yourself. Well, I didn't know she was going to emphasize it by calling you right at the station. That voice right there is Sheena.
Second. Alright, I'm ready now. Sorry about that. My back was fucking killing me.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Happy first 100 days. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that the bipartisan Take It Down Act passed the House last night. This important legislation was championed and guided through Congress by our wonderful First Lady, Melania Trump, including through her direct advocacy on behalf of survivors during her passage efforts. The Take It Down Act criminalizes the publication of non-consensual intimate imagery and requires social media and similar websites to remove such content within 48 hours of notice from a victim. The First Lady thanks all those who voted in favor of this important legislation, and the President looks forward to signing it when it arrives on his desk. Today officially marks 100 days of promises made and promises kept by President Trump. This has truly been the most historic start to a presidency in American history. After building the greatest economy in the world in his first term as president, President Trump is in the process of doing that all over again. The American people trust in President Trump. Since his first day in office, President Trump has focused on defeating the Biden inflation crisis, bringing down the cost of living, and making the United States the best place in the world to do business, invest, create jobs, and innovate. And President Trump's efforts are working. 345,000 jobs have already been added since the start of President Trump's term. Last
mean,
month's
that's
jobs
good, but
report
who
saw
cares?
nearly 100,000 more jobs
Right,
than
who gives a
economists
fuck?
predicted. And
already
it was
seen
the
this part, so
fourth
let's skip
high
ahead.
energy medium-duty vehicles and the Department of Transportation's latest corporate
You know
average
what?
fuel.
Actually, fuck this. We're gonna watch something different because it's boring. Boring! Plus, I spent like 5 minutes by myself fucking fixing my back. So I gotta figure out something different. Let us see here.
Everybody. Happy first 100 days. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that the bipartisan Take It Down Act passed the House last night. This important legislation was championed and guided through Congress by our wonderful First Lady, Melania Trump, including through her direct advocacy on behalf of survivors during her passage efforts. The Take It Down Act criminalizes the publication of non-consensual intimate imagery and requires social media and similar websites to remove such content within 48 hours of notice from a victim. The First Lady thanks all those who voted in favor of this important legislation, and the President looks forward to signing it when it arrives on his desk. Today officially marks 100 days of promises made and promises kept by President Trump. This has truly been the most historic start to a presidency in American history. After building the greatest economy in the world in his first term as president, President Trump is in the process of doing that all over again. The American people trust in President Trump. Since his first day in office, President Trump has focused on defeating the Biden inflation crisis, bringing down the cost of living, and making the United States the best place in the world to do business, invest, create jobs, and innovate. And President Trump's efforts are working. 345,000 jobs have already been added since the start of President Trump's term. Last month's jobs report saw nearly 100,000 more jobs than economists predicted, and it was the fourth highest month for private payroll growth in the past 2 years. 9,000 manufacturing jobs have been added to the economy already. This is a sharp contrast to the 6,000 manufacturing jobs that were lost each month in the final 2 years of the Biden administration. The U.S. employment rate remains at historic lows. And thanks to President Trump, Americans are seeing price relief for the first time in years. The last inflation report showed the first consumer price decline since the COVID pandemic, a decrease in energy prices, and real average hourly wage growth. President Trump is delivering on his promises to lower costs for American families and businesses. Prices across the board for everyday goods have seen declines since this president was inaugurated. From airfare to used motor vehicles to prescription drugs, prices are dropping. In fact, last month's drop in the price of prescription drugs was the largest ever recorded. And after Joe Biden botched the response to the bird flu, President Trump and Secretary Rollins' aggressive plan have brought down wholesale egg prices more than 50% from Inauguration Day. President Trump ended Joe Biden's reckless war on American energy and fossil fuels and has restored American energy dominance. And Secretary Wright, Secretary Doug Burgum are working hard on that effort every single day. Oil and gas prices are now way down because of this bold approach. Gasoline prices down 7%. Energy prices are also down as well. The Department of Interior just announced a new offshore drilling policy that will boost oil production in the Gulf of America by 100,000 barrels per day.
Okay,
On the deregulation front,
right there.
President Trump is committed to cutting senseless red tape, especially for America's small business owners who are the backbone of our economy. We know cutting regulation leads to lower costs and higher growth. The mass deregulation effort by this administration will help usher in the golden age of America, which is underway. Immediately upon taking office, President Trump blocked all of the unfinalized Biden-era rules, saving Americans more than $100 billion, or $2,100 per family of 4 over the next decade. And the president also launched a bold multi-agency effort to roll back existing federal regulations that drive up the cost of living on hardworking families. This effort is projected to yield significant cost savings in the coming months, including the EPA's rollback of tailpipe emission rules for light-duty and medium-duty vehicles and the Department of Transportation's latest corporate average fuel economy standards. These two efforts alone yield $755 billion in total savings, or more than $8,800 per family of 4 over the next decade. In total, the combined savings from all of these actions equal just over $935 billion, or nearly $11,000 in real savings per family of 4 per the coming decade. The press is not talking nearly enough about the positive impact of President Trump's deregulation campaign. And investments from the biggest companies and countries in the world are pouring in under this president. So far, total investment commitments under the Trump administration have reached more than $5 trillion, including $500 billion from Apple in U.S.-based manufacturing and training, $500 billion from NVIDIA and AI infrastructure, $100 billion from TSMC and U.S.-based chips manufacturing, and the $500 billion private investment by OpenAI, Oracle, and SoftBank in AI infrastructure as well. All of these investment commitments are estimated to generate at least 451,000 new high-paying jobs for American workers and families. At this point, President Trump has secured more investments in the United States of America in 100 days than Joe Biden did in 4 years.
That's cool.
President Trump is America's business-man in chief, and that's why these trillions of dollars in investments.
I think President Trump would make a great vice president.
Investments are flooding to our country. The business community is bullish on America because President Trump is back in charge. Tomorrow, the president will host CEOs and leaders from several companies that have made these investments to tout their historic commitments to our country and encourage others to follow suit. Under President Trump, there has never been a better time to invest in America. And the president finally said enough is enough and refused to allow America and our workers to be ripped off any longer on trade. President Trump implemented powerful tariffs to end the era of economic surrender and to rebalance America's trading agreements. More than 100 countries have already come to the table looking to offer more favorable terms for America and our people. There has never been a president who has created his own leverage like this president, and we are just getting started. Republicans in Congress are getting very close to passing President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill, which will include the largest tax cuts in American history,
That'd be awesome.
Strong border security measures, major military advancements, dramatic deregulation, and common sense spending reforms. As President Trump has said before, the best is yet to come. For more on President Trump's economic successes so far and the plans ahead, I want to pass it off to our incredible Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, who is here today, and we will open it up to questions. In our new media seat, we have Brendan Peterson, the financial services reporter for Punchbowl News. Punchbowl News covers power, people, and politics based in Washington, D.C. Laser focus on Capitol Hill, the politics of legislating, founded in 2021, and it is the first newsletter that Capitol Hill and the White House reads every morning in the middle of the day and throughout the evening. Thanks for being here with us, and we'll start with you today.
Imagine if the day after you purchased a home, its value dropped by 20% and continued to drop every single day. You would never make that investment. Yet that's exactly what happens when you buy a car. The moment you drive it off the lot, it loses 20% of its value and continues to lose value every day. Not to mention the thousands you'll spend on maintenance and insurance. For a century, people have been buying cars because they've had no other option. Until now. FlexCar is completely reimagining car ownership. You can drive what you want, when you want. Cruise in a Jeep for the summer, switch to an SUV for the winter, or stick with your favorite ride for years. The choice is yours. And the best part? It costs less than a monthly car loan. No down payment, no debt, no locked-in contracts. Just the newest cars and the latest technology, with maintenance and insurance included. That's the freedom of FlexCar, the world's first.
Thanks so much for being here. I have a question for Secretary Bessent. On tariffs, the president said over the weekend that we are hoping that maybe tariff revenues could replace income tax. But we also keep hearing about the deals that the administration is pursuing. So my question is, what is the White House's ultimate objective here? Do you want to have long-term tariff revenue or deals that might reduce those tariffs?
I think it's a combination of both. So we're going to take in long-term tariff revenue. We put a process in place. We have 18 important trading relationships. We will be speaking to all of those partners, or at least 17 of them, over the next few weeks. Many of them have already come to Washington. What President Trump is referring to is the ability for tariff revenue to give income tax relief. And I think there's a very good chance that we will see this in the upcoming tax bill. The president campaigned on no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime, and the restoring interest deductibility for autos, for American-made autos. So tariff income could be used for tax relief on all of those immediately.
So you think that there is a role for significant tariff revenue in U.S. fiscal policy?
I think that it is something that got put away a long time ago, and I think that tariffs will bring back American manufacturing and generate substantial revenues.
On manufacturing, we've seen some pretty grisly surveys this month from the Philly Fed, which saw the biggest drop since May of 2020, and the Dallas Fed, similar plunging outlook, poor shipping orders. What are American manufacturers not understanding about your push for onshoring in the U.S.?
Well, I think I was in the investment business 35 years, and I learned to ignore the survey data and look at the actual data, and the actual data has been quite good. The job data is good. Americans keep spending, and as Caroline said, we have these incredible commitments to bring manufacturing back on shore with record investment by domestic corporations and foreigners who want to come into the U.S.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. The Chinese continue to say that the U.S. and China are not engaged in any consultation or negotiation on tariffs. You recently said you've talked to your counterpart, but more about, quote, traditional things like financial stability. So can you clarify, is the administration talking to Beijing specifically about tariffs or not?
Well, we're not going to talk about who's talking to whom, but I think that over time we will see that the Chinese tariffs are unsustainable for China. I've seen some very large numbers over the past few days that show if these numbers stay on, Chinese could lose 10 million jobs very quickly, and even if there is a drop in the tariffs, that they could lose 5 million jobs. So remember that we are the deficit country. They sell almost 5 times more goods to us than we sell to them. So the onus will be on them to take off these tariffs. They're unsustainable for them.
And they are saying you guys are not talking about it. So is that true?
Look, they have a different form of government. They're playing to a different audience. So I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty, again, of who's talking to whom. But as I said, I believe for the Chinese, these tariffs are unsustainable.
And very quickly, 2 days ago, you said you didn't know if President Trump had spoken to Xi Jinping. Do you know now?
Again, I would say Caroline and I have a lot of jobs around the White House. Running the switchboard isn't one of them.
Bloomberg, go ahead.
Secretary Bessent, thank you so much for being here this morning. You've talked about the importance of giving investors certainty when it comes to the market, yet the Trump administration is continuing to negotiate several complex trade deals in a very sort of compressed time frame. When do you expect you'll be able to give the market some certainty around those deals? Do you have a deadline? Is it the 90-day pause? What are we looking at here?
Good question. And I think one thing that has been a little disconcerting for the markets is, President Trump creates what I would call strategic uncertainty in the negotiations. So he is more concerned about getting the best possible trade deals for the American people. We had 4 years of bad deals for decades of unfair trading, and we are going to unwind those and make them fair. What we are doing is we've created a process. I think the aperture of uncertainty will be narrowing, and as we start moving forward announcing deals, then there will be certainty. But certainty is not necessarily a good thing in negotiating.
Mr. Secretary, last night there were reports on the administration sort of walking back a little bit on the auto tariffs. Can you sort of just elaborate on that decision there and what we can expect going forward, and why sort of the shift in those auto tariffs?
Well, President Trump has had meetings with both domestic and foreign auto producers, and he's committed to bringing back auto production to the U.S. So we want to give the automakers a path to do that quickly, efficiently, and create as many jobs as possible.
Jasmine. Thank you so much, Caroline. Thank you, Secretary. Back on China, does the administration anticipate supply chain shocks or supply shocks coming now that cargo shipments from China are significantly down? And if so, are there plans in the process of how to address that?
I wouldn't think that we would have supply chain shocks, and I think retailers have managed their inventory in front of this. I speak to dozens of companies, sometimes daily, but definitely weekly, and they know that President Trump is committed to fair trade and have planned accordingly.
And then second question, can you outline the timeline for when you think some of these deals, particularly with your Asian countries like India, Japan, South Korea, you may have an announcement?
I'm glad you brought up our Asian trading partners and allies. They have been the most forthcoming in terms of doing the deals. As I mentioned, Vice President Vance was in India last week. I think that he and Modi made some very good progress, so I could see some announcements on India. I could see the contours of a deal with the Republic of Korea coming together, and then we've had substantial talks with the Japanese.
Andrea.
Secretary Bessent, just continuing on the path of the sort of progress. You said yesterday, I think, that it was could happen as early as this week or possibly next week. Can you give us a bit of a timetable? And then I wanted to ask about South Korea specifically. They've said that they probably won't be able to make a comprehensive deal until early July because of their elections. Japan also has elections. And to what extent are domestic factors complicating your efforts? Canada just had an election. Are you seeing that you might have to think about delaying the 90 days?
Well, I would actually take the opposite tact, that I think from our talks that these governments actually want to have the framework of a trade deal done before they go into elections to show that they have successfully negotiated with the United States. So we are finding that they are actually much more keen to come to the table, get this done, and then go home and campaign on it.
Sean, I'm sorry, did you have a comment on whether something could happen this week or next week? For a deal. So, you said yesterday.
Again, I think that we are very close on India. And in India, just a little inside baseball, India, in a funny way, is easier to negotiate with than many other countries because they have very high tariffs and lots of tariffs. So it's much easier to confront the direct tariffs when as we go through these unfair trade deals that have been put in over decades, that the non-tariff trade barriers can be much more insidious and also harder to detect. So a country like India, which has the posted and ready tariffs, it's much easier to negotiate with them. So I think the India negotiations are moving well.
Sean, go
Hi,
ahead.
Mr. Secretary. So it was reported this morning that Amazon will soon display a little number next to the price of each product that shows how much the Trump tariffs are adding to the cost of each product. So isn't that a perfect, crystal clear demonstration that it's the American consumer and not China who is going to have to pay for these policies?
I will take this, since I just got off the phone with the president about Amazon's announcement. This is a hostile and political act by Amazon. Why didn't Amazon do this when the Biden administration hiked inflation to the highest level in 40 years? And I would also add that It's not a surprise because, as Reuters recently wrote, Amazon has partnered with a Chinese propaganda arm. So this is another reason why Americans should buy American. It's another reason why we are onshoring critical supply chains here at home to shore up our own critical supply chain and boost our own manufacturing here.
China's trying to downplay what's going on in America. Like their involvement, shit like that, trying to fucking turn the American people against everyone, so they'll have more people on their side, even though they're doing absolutely terrible fucking things to everyone, including their own citizens, slaving their own fucking citizens, absolutely terribly fucking just greedy, just money, 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 money. They have zero fucking honor anymore, let's be honest. There's no such thing as honor anymore in China. Let's be honest. And yeah, that's pretty much it, man.
Bezos still a Trump supporter?
Look, I will not speak to the president's relationships with Jeff Bezos, but I will tell you that this is certainly a hostile and political action by Amazon. And
they don't know what honor. They don't know what honor is anymore. Apparently, fucking China was this honorable fucking place, but no way, dude. They lie, they cheat, they steal from every fucking person they could possibly fucking do it to, including their own people. Sick fucks, dude.
Yeah, I would also add that the bringing down the terrible Biden inflation has been a priority for the first 100 days of the Trump administration, and President Trump has done a great job of leading that since January 20th. Interest rates, mortgage rates are down. Gasoline.
I think this administration should go straight tyrant and just fucking start throwing Democrats in jail, executing them, shit like that, bro. Anyone who is that bad against our country needs to pay for it. Enough's enough, man. Enough's fucking enough, dude.
And energy prices are down. We're expecting the further decreases. And as Caroline said, the big tax on consumers that goes unnoticed is deregulation or regulation, and we are deregulating and bringing that down. So, from a household income point of view, we would expect real purchasing increases. We've seen them over the first 100 days, and we would expect that to accelerate. We are doing peace deals, trade deals, tax deals, and deregulating. And the deregulation is a longer lead time, but I think by the third and fourth quarters, that's really going to kick in.
Thank you, Caroline.
You fucking pick up the shit, dude. I'm pressing A.
We talk a lot about volatility and uncertainty in the marketplace. And the president has stated all along that he's more concerned about mainstream America, the American worker. You just talked about deregulation and this entire fair trade and reciprocals. What is your message to the American people in terms of letting them get through this disturbance and the outcome being greater and a greater good for the American worker, the American people, the American families?
I would. The game has tons of stuff for you to do without. They give you starting decks for all the factions. There are 6 factions: Chaos, Space Marines, Tyranids, Orcs, Eldari, I think, and Necrons.
Huh?
Right on cue.
Say, trust in President Trump. There's a reason he was reelected to this office. It's because of the historic success of his economic formula in the first term, and as I laid out at the beginning of the briefing and the Secretary has talked about and the President talks about every day, there's a proven formula that works. Massive deregulation, energy independence, and tax cuts, which are coming. And the Secretary is working very hard on that with our counterparts on Capitol Hill. If you want to talk about that, that's a huge deal to put more money back into the pockets of hardworking Americans. As for the fair trade deals the President is trying to negotiate, he's not just righting the wrong of the mess that he inherited from the past 4 years of the Biden administration. This is a mess that has been created for the past 4 decades, that has sold out the middle class, that has moved jobs overseas. You think about our heartland, middle America, what towns used to look like, what they look like today. President Trump wants to restore the golden age, and it's a process to do that. And that process is underway, but he's put together a fantastic trade team. Secretary Bessent, Secretary Lutnick, Jamieson Greer, all working incredibly hard on this effort 24/7. But tax cuts are coming, and that's key. And Mr. Secretary, why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yep. So it's really a three-legged stool in the economic policy. It's trade, it's tax, and it's deregulation. So we are in the midst of addressing, as Caroline said, these long-term trade imbalances. The tax bill is going much better than I would have thought when I took office on January 28th, and that's through President Trump's leadership. That Speaker Johnson, Leader Thune are united. Speaker Johnson, we had a very good meeting yesterday with something called the Big Six, NEC Director Kevin Hassett, myself, Speaker Johnson, Leader Thune, Committee Chairman Jason Smith, and Senator Crapo. And the tax bill is moving forward. It is going to give permanence to the 2017 Tax Cuts and Job Act, which will, back to the question on certainty, it will give American business certainty, it will give American people certainty, and then President Trump is also adding the things for working Americans that is talked about earlier: no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security.
By the way, Democrats voted against no tax on tips, no fucking tax on overtime, and all that shit, dude. All this really good stuff that would be super beneficial to the country, they fucking voted against because they just don't like Trump. Fuck you losers, dude. Fucking grow up.
Making auto payments deductible, so that will substantially address the affordability crisis. And the other thing that I would note, and back to data, is that the Vanguard, one of the largest money management firms in America, said that over the past 100 days, 97% of Americans haven't done a trade, and in fact, individual investors have held tight while institutional investors have panicked. So individual investors trust individual investors trust President Trump.
Megan, in the back.
Thank you both. Can you detail for us exactly what we should expect as far as relief on the auto tariffs front? And then further, Mr. Secretary, should we expect other industries to also get relief the way we've now seen for auto and tech as well?
I'm not going to go into the details of the auto tariff relief, but I can tell you that it will go substantially toward reshoring American auto manufacturing. And again, the goal here is to bring back the high quality industrial jobs to the U.S. President Trump is interested in the jobs of the future, not the jobs of the past. We don't need to necessarily have a booming textile industry like where I grew up again, but we do want to have precision manufacturing and bring that back. And another important, very important function of this that does not get talked about enough is national security. President Trump, his overriding the concern and belief is that economic security is national security is economic security. And we saw during COVID that our supply chains got cut off. And we need to bring back a lot of those supply chains, whether it's in semiconductors, medicines, the steel, and we have to onshore those. So it's a combination of making trade free and fair and remedying this gaping national security hole that he was left with.
If I could on China,
I would just add, Megan, the president will sign the executive order on auto tariffs later today, and we will release it as we always do. Go ahead.
Secretary, any updates on the negotiation? We used a Spectrum savings calculator before. I learned that since we're existing Spectrum Internet customers, we get a mobile line for a year. With the European Union, and is it hard to negotiate with the European Union? Do you have any updates on the negotiation with the European Union?
I'm more involved in the Asian negotiations. My observation would be, goes all the way back to Henry Kissinger's statement, when I call Europe, who do I call? So we're negotiating with a lot of different interests. Some of the European countries have put on an unfair digital service tax on our big internet provider. France and Italy, other countries, Germany and Poland, don't have that. So we want to see that unfair tax of one of America's great industries removed. So it's going to be a give and take. So they have some internal matters to decide before they can engage in an external negotiation.
Edward.
Yeah, thanks, Caroline. Mr. Secretary, so contacts I have in the business community say that they're basically frozen for long-term investment because of the uncertainty around tariffs. How long do you think President Trump has to make a deal before there's damage to the economy?
Look, I think that what we're seeing is that business leaders, they've gone into a pause, and I think we're going to give them great certainty on this tax bill. And I think over the next couple of weeks, as I said, we have 18 important trading relationships. We'll put China to the side. 17 they are in motion. And then, as I said yesterday, I think there's a very good chance we're going to get this tax bill done. And the tax bill is going to be very powerful for domestic U.S. investment. So what we are going to do, one of the most powerful parts of President Trump's 2017 tax bill was full expensing of equipment. We are going to make that, as President Trump said in his speech to Congress, that will be retroactive to January 20th. The other thing that we are looking to add is full expensing for factories. Yep. So bring your factory back. You can fully expense the equipment and the building. We will couple that with deregulation, cheap energy, and regulatory certainty, and that will continue to make the U.S. the greatest destination for domestic and foreign investment.
And the president, well, if I can follow, just the president said that world leaders would like to meet with him in Rome and Vatican City. About trade. Other than President Zelensky, who did the president meet with, and about trade, and when could we get some of those deals?
The president met with President Zelensky, as you know, which we talked about, and the president continues to be engaged with his fellow leaders around the world in the European Union. You've seen many of them visit the White House. I want to harp on, in closing, the point the Secretary just made. On the campaign trail, the president promised the American public that he was going to make America the best country in the world to do business again. The lowest taxes, lowest regulation, lowest energy costs of anywhere in the world. And if you do business in the United States, you won't pay a tariff, you won't pay a price. That's not just good for companies around the world, but it's good for the American worker. Yes. That's what this team is focused so hard on every day. We have work to do. The golden age of America is underway. But as I pointed out in the beginning, there's a lot of reason for the American consumer, the American CEO, the American small business owner to be confident and optimistic about this president and where we're headed. So you will hear more from the president himself later this evening. He is traveling to Michigan, as you all know. He'll make a stop at the Air Force Base with Governor Whitmer, and then we will head to a
fucking bunch of retards calling you a piece of shit for no fucking reason. You got a bunch of assholes everywhere, dude. It's just crazy. Crazy.
Rally tonight, where you'll hear more from him directly. So we'll see you in Michigan. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Caroline.
Commercials too, man. I really know. Should we watch now, guys? I think we should watch. Yeah.
Thank you very much. We have Jonas Gahr Støre here, who is as you know, the Prime Minister of Norway. He's a great gentleman, highly respected, beloved in his country. And we've had talks on the war with Ukraine and Russia and trade. We're doing very well, I think, on both. We've had some pretty good movement and every respect. The war is very important that it ends with, I used to say 2,500 people a week dying, young people, mostly soldiers from Russia and Ukraine. And we want to end that war. We want to end it quickly. And I think we've made a lot of progress. And we'll see what happens. This next few days is going to be very important. Meetings are taking place right now. Additionally, we talked about trade, and we will definitely, we get along very well on trade. We'll do something, but I think the Prime Minister knows that over the years, the United States has been very good to a lot of people, and it's time for us to benefit also. So we're going to have a good relationship on trade, and we discussed other things also. But Mr. Prime Minister, it's an honor to have you to White House. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. This year is 200 years since the first immigration from Norway to the U.S. We come here early in your term. Appreciate that you take time. We have highlighted that very close cooperation. We are allies. We look after security in the north, in the Arctic. A lot of confidence between our services. We have discussed in detail the war in Ukraine. I have saluted the President for his initiative to make progress towards something that can be a ceasefire and an end to this terrible conflict. It is a complex picture, but it needs political will and push, and we have exchanged ideas on that. And then I think the President and his team have been open to hear our perspectives. And on trade, we have also emphasized that we can benefit, both of us, by trading. We can be complementary, and we can find good solutions.
Yeah,
First of all, I appreciate, Mr. President, the spirit and the tone of this conversation, which has been a confirmation of a very strong partnership.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Mr. President,
Yes.
can I ask you first, Mr. President, have you spoken about the tariffs that you want to impose on Norway? Is there a chance that you can lower
We spoke
them,
about
lower
trade,
those tariffs?
and we understand each other very well. I think we'll have no problem.
You think that
I think we'll have no problem whatsoever with Norway.
I think
Did you discuss a possible visit to Norway? Did you discuss a possible visit for President Trump to
We
Norway?
didn't, but I love it. I mean, I've been there, and it is a beautiful place.
Come on, fucking
I
doing
told
it,
the
bro.
President that,
Fucking
you
hitting
know,
it.
he is receiving us early in the term. He is welcome to visit Norway. We would like to have him, and it will be another way of emphasizing this strong friendship.
Mr. President, Norway has been a staunch supporter of Ukraine since the Russian invasion in 2022. Has something been discussed here today that may have altered your views on this?
No, we want to, very simply, I have no allegiance to anybody. I have allegiance to saving lives, and I want to save a lot of lives. A lot of young people, mostly young people. It's the war. It's the soldiers, and if we can do that, also, as you know, I got started because the money that's been spent on this war is insane. It should have never happened.
Yeah.
And it would have never happened if I were president. But Biden spent $350 billion on this, and it's a shame. And that's what got me involved. And then I looked at, and I see the results. It's horrible. It's a killing field. 5,000 soldiers a week on average. And we want to stop that. We both want to stop that for a lot of reasons, but I would say that is my number one reason.
Do you think that Russia, that you will get Russia to accept a deal that also Ukraine and Europe is?
They clearly.
I think so. I do. I believe they will accept.
They clearly don't.
And I think we're going to get this over with. I hope so soon.
Continue to lack support from NATO allies in your goal of obtaining Greenland. How will you
the whole world
proceed if
came
you
up
don't
against
get that
Russia and killed
support?
Well, Greenland's going to be interesting, but that's for another day. I think we need that for international
What are you
peace.
expecting of your
And if you
allies?
don't have that, I think it's a big threat to our world. So I think Greenland's very important for international
Literally,
peace.
if you
Yeah,
bomb,
please go.
if we bombed Russia, China, Iran, and probably North Korea, we'd have world peace, probably for the next 200 years. Let's be honest.
President, this morning in Truth Social Post, you used the words Vladimir, stop. That seemed like a slightly different message, a personal message. What is your level of frustration with President Putin?
I didn't like last night. I wasn't happy with it. And we're in the midst of talking peace, and missiles were fired. And I was not happy with it. That's what I meant, and that's, you know. I assume that's what you mean.
Sorry.
Yeah.
If the bombs keep falling, will you consider additional sanctions for Russia, or what will you do?
We're going to bomb the shit out of
I'd rather answer that question in a week. I want to see if we can have a deal. No reason to answer it now, but I won't be happy. Let me put it that way. Things will happen.
Why are you not putting more pressure on Russia?
I think we're putting on an incredible amount of pressure. We have literally made Russia lose face the entire month. They don't look like the bad guy. Made Putin a complete animal. So he's completely done. So yeah, he's pretty much
putting a lot of pressure. You don't know what pressure I'm putting on Russia. They're dealing. You have no idea what pressure I'm putting on Russia. We're putting a lot of pressure.
Yeah, we are.
A lot of pressure on Russia.
Yes, we are.
And Russia knows that, and some people that are close to it know, or he wouldn't be talking right now.
We are putting so much pressure on Russia that it's making Vladimir Putin act. And it's making him act irrationally. And whatever. I mean, it's fine.
Better than anybody. He wouldn't be talking right now. He's talking. And we're putting a lot of pressure. I think he wants to make a deal. We're going to find out very soon. But it takes two to tango. And you have to have Ukraine want to make a deal, too. And they're being hit very hard. And I do believe they want to make a deal.
Mr. Prime Minister.
Yeah, right, maybe.
Mr. Prime Minister, if I may.
You said that it's
bad about not being involved.
The Ukraine have to give some territory to win peace, among them Crimea. Do you stand by that? And I know that the former NATO General Secretary today has told me that he does not agree and he believes in territorial integrity of the Ukraine. How will you deal with that with your allies? And do you stand by that Ukraine have to give?
Former Secretary General happens to be right here, you know, so they can't put words in his mouth. He's been a great general, frankly. It was because that's what you are. Really, you're a general. But he's been a great Secretary General. We had a tremendous relationship, very successful, and I think he could speak for himself. He's right here.
But do you still agree that Ukraine had to give some territory away to win peace?
Well, it depends what territory. They've been fighting. They've lost a lot of territory. And we'll do the best we can. Working with Ukraine, we'll do the best we can. But they lost a lot of territory. When you say Crimea, that was handed over during a president named Barack Hussein Obama. That had nothing to do with me, Crimea. That was 11 years ago with Obama. And they made a decision. There wasn't a bullet fired. There was no fighting. There was no anything. They just handed it over. Now they say, well, can you get it back? I think that's going to be a very difficult thing to do. That was given by Barack Obama when he was president, not by Donald Trump.
Thank you, Mr. President.
President,
As you know, you have a peace proposal that you put on the table. It's a 30-day ceasefire proposal. Your national security team presented it to both Ukraine and Russia. 2 months ago, Ukraine agreed to that ceasefire proposal immediately. Russia has not. And my question is Russia the obstacle to peace based upon that, just getting to that 30-day ceasefire?
I don't think so. I think that they both want peace right now. They're ready to do something. We'll see what happens. Complicated, very complicated. But I think they are both very much looking to make a deal. Marco, what would you say?
Well, first of all, what was put before our partners was options to discuss about things that it would take to end a war. This war is endable. Both sides just have to agree to it. We've shown them a pathway forward. We've discussed those ideas. It was a good meeting yesterday. There'll be good meetings over the weekend. We've shown them the finish line. We need both of them to say yes. But what happened last night with those missile strikes should remind everybody of why this war needs to end. It's horrible those missiles landed. What's even worse is there are today people remind everybody of why this war needs to end. It's horrible those missiles landed. What's even worse is there are today people that were alive yesterday that are not alive today. because this war continues, and the president wants to stop it. And everyone should be thanking the president for being a peacemaker and trying to save lives. That's what we're trying to do here. It's not our war; we didn't start it, as you know. But we're trying to end the dying. We're trying to end the destruction, and we've shown the path forward. We can see the finish line, but both of them have to get there. We're going to do everything we can to help them get there, but they have to ultimately say yes.
And we are using a lot of pressure on both. You know, if you think we're just in there because we're nice people, and we are nice people, but we're using a lot of pressure on both.
What concessions, Mr. President, and to your national security team, what concessions has Russia offered up thus far to get to the point where you're closer to peace?
Stopping the war, taking the whole country. Pretty big concession.
Mr. President, if you are going to take down the tariffs, what do you want Norway to buy more of from the U.S.?
Every shot counts. So much to punch.
To buy more? Well, you don't need snow. You don't need skis. You don't need ski champions either, right? You have a lot of them. We just want to keep the relationship the way it is. We've had a great relationship. I think now maybe closer than ever, but we've had a great relationship with Norway. I think just keep it the way it is, kid. You can't do better.
Really? Not even by, say,
Well, if they want to give us some additional concessions, that's okay. You can't do much better. Yes, yes.
Mr. President, you had a long meeting with Norway today. You said that Norway is doing a lot of things right, but on the Ukraine, if I can ask both you and the Prime Minister, did you find common ground today on Ukraine and the peace plan?
Totally. It's totally common ground. The Prime Minister can speak about it, but I can just say he wants to see people stop dying more than anything else, and he'd like to see it end. He's going to help us end it.
Mr. President, can I say that to move towards an end of this war, U.S. engagement is critical, and President Trump made that possible. That is clear, that is obvious, it's really happening. Now the important thing is that both parties have to know that they have to deliver, and they have to feel to deliver. Ukraine is under attack. They are defending themselves. Lives are being lost. And we believe very firmly that there needs to be a ceasefire. The initiative taken by the U.S. Some time ago needs to be respected. And then to move on to something which both parties can own. That is the complicated part in such a dramatic war. And here I believe Europeans and Americans working together, as we do much closer now. I salute the team of President Trump of being, open in that process. We had a good discussion on this today, and then we have to move on, and we cannot lose time because this is too much drama happening. One thing is people losing their lives, but it is a bad thing for Europe, and it's a bad thing for the world to having such a broad conflict going on. It can have ramifications far beyond Ukraine.
Mr. President, Mr. President, Mr. President, I forgot my question. I wanted to ask about
that happens.
It happens sometimes, yeah. No, Mr. President, I wanted to ask about the the pull out of negotiating for peace, trying to broker peace. Does that also mean a no on Patriot missiles, a no on sharing intelligence with Ukraine?
Let's see what happens. I think we're going to make a deal. And if we make a deal, that'll be wonderful. We won't have to worry about your question. You can ask that question in 2 weeks, and we'll see. But I think we're getting very close. The Prime Minister feels the same way, and we'll hopefully not have to answer that.
You said once the President. Mr. President,
Norway is the third country to be officially invited to the White House after Liberation Day. Why did you invite Norway so soon to the White House?
Because I like them. And I like your Prime Minister, and I like the way your government runs. And I respect the King. He's highly respected in Norway. It's a great thing, not an easy thing to do. He's done a great job. Yeah.
Would you like an invitation to visit the King?
Absolutely. You get me that invitation.
I just told the President he's welcome to visit Norway.
President Trump, first point you said before that you like the Norwegian Petroleum Fund, and I'm wondering if that has been up for discussion today, the way that we have structured our whether
Well, this fund was created in the late 1990s to save for future generations the income from oil and gas. Norwegians should continue to work as hard, dedicated, innovate, and move forward, despite having these incomes, which we happen to be in the period of our history where we can harvest, and we have transferred that into investments, half of them, by the way, here in the United States. So I think this is a model which we have been able to explore. If we can share experiences, and we do with our colleagues in the US, you never copy this one-to-one, but there can be techniques and way of working that we have used in organizing our fund. Jens Stoltenberg was the finance minister when the first dollar entered that fund.
Okay.
So he is a safe hand to have as a finance minister today. What do you say?
No, and as you said, Mr. Prime Minister, we are ready to sit down with the U.S. To also work with them on if they want to establish a sovereign wealth fund, because we have a good experience with our fund. And I think that one example of how we work together with the United States is that half of the fund, close to $1 trillion are invested in the United States, mainly in equity, but also some in fixed income, including government bonds. So this is an expression of trust in the United States, expressed by the strong investment of the sovereign wealth fund. And just briefly on Ukraine, since it was mentioned, we had a very good and extensive discussion about Ukraine, the path forward to peace. And as the Prime Minister said, we commend the US for pushing forward to try to find a negotiated solution. At the same time, we need to continue to support Ukraine, and therefore I'm proud that Norway has actually tripled the military support to Ukraine. And this year we will allocate close to $8 billion to Ukraine. That will strengthen them and also their hand on the negotiating table.
If I may add to that, if there's a peace, and there will be a peace, we have a common responsibility in securing democratic Ukraine for the future. And the best security guarantee they can have is the ability to defend themselves. And we are investing in that.
Mr. Prime Minister, if I may...
As it relates to tariffs, Mr. President, when you unveiled your reciprocal tariffs on April the 2nd, the tariff rate for Norway was 15%. Based upon your conversations that you've had today with the Prime Minister, do you see that tariff rate coming down from what you proposed just a few weeks ago?
Well, they have a great fund of $2 trillion. It's a big fund, and they don't have any debt. So I think they'd probably be willing to pay us more than that, I hope.
Mr. President, in 2018, your former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo called for an end to Russian occupation.
70. Rise.
Crimea. Why does this administration, why has this administration changed its stance on territorial concessions for Crimea?
Well, the war started. It would have never started if I were president. This is a war that is horrible. Horrible. All wars are horrible. This one is in particular bad. And I don't know that you can ever say there's going to be a winner to this, because so many lives have been lost. Not only soldiers, a lot of lives have been lost. I think that we want to do one very simple thing. It would have never happened if I were president. Zero chance it was going to. And it didn't. People say, how do you know that? Number one, it didn't happen. We never even discussed it. I would talk to Putin about it. It was the apple of his eye. Ukraine was the apple of Putin's eye, but there was never even a thought that he'd go in. And I think he understood that I would not be happy if he did. And it was only when I got out, and when you mention what happened to Ukraine years ago under President Obama and a vice president that was also president later, unfortunately for this country, what happened is large chunks of land were given up, and it was called Crimea, and that was a big thing. That was a big moment. But this isn't my war. This is Biden's war. This is a war that Biden was president when this war happened. But I'm trying to put out the fire, and I think we'll be successful. And if we do, we're going to save a lot of lives. Otherwise,
we're going to have to go to war.
The Prime Minister had a statement. He said, "This is just a point in time. We're very lucky because this is a point. And if this doesn't happen, this could go on for a long time."
Mr. President, will you have meetings with other world leaders when you're in Rome, sir?
Future Democrat president?
I don't think he will. I think he wants to make peace. I think he wants to end it, and I feel pretty confident of that. But we're gonna know pretty soon.
Mr. President, will you have meetings with other world leaders when you're in Rome?
Yes, I will.
Which leaders do you want to meet, sir?
Well, I'd like to meet them all. That would be nice. I'd like to take care of all of them, but we have many of them there, and they all want to meet. They want to meet about trade. And we are making some great inroads and great deals. You might want to speak about that, Mr. Secretary.
We had a very successful bilateral meeting with the Republic of South Korea today. We may be moving faster than I thought, and we will be talking technical terms as early as next week, as we reach an agreement on understanding as soon as next week. So South Koreans came early. They came with their A game, and we will see if they follow through on that.
President, do you think you deserve the Nobel Peace Prize if you manage to create peace?
Do I deserve the Nobel Peace Prize?
If you manage to create peace.
Well, maybe for the Abraham Accords. I don't want to get ahead of myself in this one, but they say for the Abraham Accords. And by the way, speaking of that, we're going to be filling it up. A lot of countries want to come into the Abraham Accords. You know, we have 4. And Biden did nothing on that one, too. It's the same 4. But they're great countries, and they were brave doing it, and it's worked out very well. And we're going to be filling up the Abraham Accords. They're going to be, I think, filling it up very rapidly.
Mr. President?
Could you say something about that?
There's great, enormous opportunity to grow the Abraham Accords. But I would just point to one thing. Of all the leaders in the world today, no leader is working harder to prevent wars or end them than President Trump is right now. That's why we're talking to Iran. That's why we're engaged with Ukraine and Russia. It's the desire to prevent these wars from breaking out and to end the ones that exist already. And again, I just think it's tremendous for our country to be led by a president who desires to bring peace and establish peace and protect peace. So it's hard work.
Mr. President, Marco just mentioned something that maybe we should talk about for just a second, if we could, Mr. Prime Minister. And you're involved in it too, because you've been involved in the world and peace. But I think we're doing very well with respect to Iran, and we're having very serious meetings. And there are only 2 options, and the one option is not a good option. It's not a good option at all. And I think we're doing very well on an agreement with Iran. That one, we're doing a lot of things, I will say, but that one is well on its way. We could have a very, very good decision, and a lot of lives will be saved.
Mr. President, on the economy, there was a slowdown. Mr. President, on the economy, there was a slowdown as it relates to home sales in the month of March, the slowest pace since 2009. Is that an economic indicator, and perhaps the Treasury Secretary can weigh in on this as well, is that an economic indicator that concerns you about the broader U.S. economy?
No, they have very good numbers on housing today, extremely good numbers, and that's despite interest rates, because, you know, if you look at what happened, everyone said, oh, I said I was going to get prices down. I did. Energy just hit $1.98 in a couple of states. It's way down. Energy's down, and we're about $64 a barrel. When I came in, and we were looking at $89, $90, $95. And by the way, that helps us solve the war too. Having those energy prices is a big incentive for Russia to also agree with solving the war problem. Groceries are down. When I was with you 2 months ago, you were complaining about eggs. I said, I just got here. I was here for about a week when the press started saying about eggs have gone through the roof. I said, I just got here. Tell me about eggs. And they have been. They went through the roof and you couldn't get them. So we just had a big Easter egg hunt at the White House. Thousands and thousands of eggs. And the price was down 87%. So we did a great job. Housing is doing very well. We should lower interest rates. That's the Fed. I hope they lower interest rates. That's the smart thing to do. Be ahead a little bit, although already it's a little bit late. But in the end, we just have a great country. We have a very strong country, and we have every other country. I can't think of one country that doesn't want to negotiate a deal. And they either negotiate a deal or we set a deal that we think is fair. Because we don't have to go through all of these. It would be physically impossible. You know, you have so many people that really understand it, which is a very small group of people here. And we are going to, at some point, just set prices for deals. Some will be tariffed. Some treated us very unfairly. They'll be tariffed higher than others. But we've been ripped off for many, many years. The United States has been ripped off like no country probably in the history of the world has been ripped off for 45, 50 years. And countries have gotten rich by doing that with the United States. We've taken care of their militaries, and military is another subject we talk about. We're not going to make that subject to any of the deals, but you know the same countries that I do where we virtually take care of their military and then don't get treated fairly on trade. So the people, and I don't blame those countries, I blame the people that sat at that beautiful desk right behind you. Because those people didn't do the job for this country. And they let us lose $4 billion a day on trade. We were losing $4 or $5 billion a day on trade when I got here. And now we're going to be much better than breaking even. And we're going to be making $4 or $5 billion a day on trade. So, I don't blame any country, not the worst of them. And we were abused by countries. I blame the President of the United States that happened to be sitting when these deals were made. Disgraceful. When I was here, we had a great 4 years. We had the most successful economy in the history of our country, my first term. And we were very tough on trade. And with China, as you know, they paid hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs. But nobody else ever did that. China paid not 10 cents to any other president. And but not only China, virtually every country got away with murder. And we just can't let that happen. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President. Thanks, everybody. Head out. Please start meeting. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, press. Head out. Let's go. Thank you. Thank you, press. Photos. Keep moving. Thank you. Thank you, press. TV, please. TV. Peter. Thank you.
Sorry.
I just thank you. We're done. Thank you. Thank you.
Living bomb. Blamo McBlamo. Hey there, Mr. Peace time here. So much Tom Holland. I really wish RFK. Okay, is it RFK? Where's RFK? I just saw RFK. You're breaking RFK. I want to see what he's going to.
All right, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm Kyle Diamanis, Deputy Commissioner for Human Foods at FDA. It's my honor and privilege to introduce to you the Commissioner of FDA, Dr. Marty Makary, a renowned surgeon, scientist, researcher, and public policy expert. Dr. Makary was confirmed as the 27th Commissioner of the FDA by a bipartisan vote of the Senate. Dr. Makary joined FDA from the Johns Hopkins University and Hospital, where he founded the Johns Hopkins Center for Surgical Trials and Outcomes Research, was named an endowed chair in the gastrointestinal surgery, and for the past 22 years has held an active clinical practice. He has authored over 300 peer-reviewed articles in medical literature, has conducted and led landmark cross-disciplinary research on a range of subjects, including obesity, cancer care, and adverse event monitoring. He is the author of a leading book on the microbiome, food policy, and other important health topics. A member of the prestigious National Academy of Medicine and the recipient of numerous honors and awards, his work has had a major and lasting impact on health policy in the field of medicine. One of the things I appreciate about Dr. Makary is that he cares deeply about people and has devoted his life to service. He was in the operating room caring for a patient the day before his Senate confirmation hearing last month. We're lucky to have him as our commissioner. He's all about helping people and driving outcomes, and today is another example of that. Please join me in welcoming FDA Commissioner Dr. Marty Makary.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Commissioner DeMontis. Good afternoon, Mr. Secretary, Dr. Bhattacharya, Governor, Speaker, the many Maha moms and the kids here supporting the effort. Thank you for being here. Thank you. That's great. Today, the FDA is taking action to remove petroleum-based food dyes from the U.S. food supply and from medications.
Why wouldn't we?
For the last 50 years, American children have increasingly been living in a toxic soup of synthetic chemicals.
Yeah, we have.
The scientific community has conducted a number of studies raising concerns about the correlation between petroleum-based synthetic dyes and several health conditions, such as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, obesity, diabetes, insulin resistance, cancer, genomic disruption, GI issues, as I've seen in the hospital, and allergic reactions. For example, this Lancet study conducted a randomized, double-blinded, placebo-controlled study on food dyes and concluded that artificial colors in the diet, quote, result in increased hyperactivity. So why are we taking a gamble? Parents, moms and dads, have also tried to raise attention to the issue. Some parents have observed that these chemicals cause hyperactivity and even aggressive behavior, and that it subsides when the chemicals are removed from the diet of the child, and sometimes even reoccurs when those petroleum-based chemical dyes are reintroduced.
Okay.
As I know from my experience taking care of children as a doctor, you have to always listen to the mom.
Why?
Other studies have found that artificial colors that create vibrant colors mess with the child's developing brain to make ultra-processed foods more attractive, even when the child already feels full. These studies have associated food colors directly with obesity and diabetes. Well, America's children are sick and suffering. 41% of children have at least one health condition, and 1 in 5 are on medication. The answer is not more Ozempic, more ADHD medication, and more antidepressants. There's a role for those medications, but we have to look at underlying root causes.
For ruining
the F in FDA stands for food.
Like actual ADHD.
Now, there's no one ingredient that accounts for the child chronic disease epidemic.
Nobody else was.
And let's be honest, taking petroleum-based food...
Let's be honest, nobody was fucking diagnosed with ADHD. Just saying that.
...out of the food supply is not a silver bullet that will instantly make America's children healthy. But it is one important step. This administration is not interested in continuing down the path of doing the same old things as we watch our nation's children get sicker.
Yeah.
We need fresh, new approaches. Cancer and diabetes in young people is going up at an alarming rate, and nobody seems to know why. We have to turn our attention to underlying causes, such as chemicals and toxins that children are exposed to, not just more insulin and chemotherapy.
Okay.
And let's not forget that the best way to lower drug prices is to stop taking drugs we don't need.
Yep.
30 states concerned about this very issue have introduced bills or laws with a patchwork of standards for food companies. So the food industry, which has many good people, has asked for clarity. So today the FDA is taking the following steps. Number one, establishing a national standard and timeline for the food industry to transition from petroleum-based food dyes to natural alternatives. Number 2, initiating a process to revoke authorization of synthetic food colorings, including those not in production, namely citrus red number 2 and orange B, within the coming weeks.
Okay.
Number 3, taking steps to eliminate the remaining 6 synthetic dyes on the market from the U.S. food supply, specifically red dye number 40, yellow dye number 5, yellow dye number 6, blue dye number 1, blue dye number 2, and green dye number 3 by the end of next year.
Good job. That's awesome.
Oh, +5. Come on.
What's red, yellow, and blue dye were they getting green?
Based food dyes to natural alternatives. Number 2, initiating a process to revoke authorization of synthetic food colorings, including those not in production, namely citrus red number 2 and orange B, within the coming weeks. Number 3, taking steps to eliminate the remaining 6 synthetic dyes on the market from the U.S. food supply, specifically red dye number 40, yellow dye number 5, yellow dye number 6, blue dye number 1, blue dye number 2, and green dye number 3 by the end of next year. We are also requesting food companies to remove red dye number 3 sooner than the 2027-2028 deadline previously announced. Awesome. These steps that we are taking means that the FDA is effectively removing all petroleum-based food dyes from the U.S. food supply. For companies that are currently using petroleum-based red dye,
works for me.
Try watermelon juice.
Yep.
Or beet juice. For companies currently combining petroleum-based yellow chemical and red dyes together,
piss off.
Try carrot juice. The FDA is also announcing plans today to authorize 4 additional natural color additives using natural ingredients in the coming weeks, while also accelerating the review and approval of other natural ingredient colors. I want to take a moment to thank America's food manufacturers. Many have been extremely cooperative. There are many good people in food manufacturing delivering on the needs of the American public. And they have done exactly what we have asked them to do. 100 years ago, we asked them to focus on mass food production to solve food insecurity.
Well, duh.
Now,
they can ruin that, didn't they?
Given our child chronic disease epidemic and enormous suffering and cost that has ensued, we have to come together to address the new problem. That's right, we have to come together. If we can get beyond the tribalism in our society, rampant in our culture, we will realize that we all want the same things.
Yep.
Republican, Democrat, and independent moms showed up in high numbers to vote for President Trump on this very issue that Secretary Kennedy has championed.
Yep.
Moms across America have spoken, and they want more honesty and humility from our nation's healthcare leaders.
Good.
And if we're being honest, ADHD is not a genetic problem, and our obesity epidemic is not a willpower problem. It's something that adults have done to children.
Yep.
I was reading a New England Journal of Medicine article recently, came out in January, referring to the chronic disease epidemic in children, specifically infertility, diabetes, obesity, attention deficit disorder, and many other health problems.
Okay.
And it referred to that group of problems with an interesting term. It called them non-communicable diseases of children. Non-communicable diseases. Well, actually, they are communicable. But kids are not getting these diseases from viruses or bacteria. They're getting them from using their phones and ultra-processed foods and chemicals and toxins that we have introduced into their world.
Yep.
Gandhi once said, the true mark of a society can be found in how it treats its most vulnerable members, including children.
Yep.
Secretary Kennedy has said that he would instruct the FDA to examine concerning ingredients in the nation's food supply, and today we are delivering on that promise.
Okay.
To be clear, the transition from petroleum-based food dyes to natural ingredient food dyes will not increase food prices. We know that from other countries that have already made the transition. It's not an opinion. Today's announcement fulfills the administration's promise to use both gold standard science and common sense. For the last 50 years, we have been running one of the largest uncontrolled scientific experiments in the world on our nation's children without their consent.
Pretty much, yep.
And today, we are removing these petroleum-based chemicals from their food supply.
We should also remove phones from children too. I don't think anybody that's under 16 years old should have a phone. Like a phone with internet, I should say. You know what I mean? I guess they should have like a phone where you can just dial 911 or just dial your parents, right? I think that would be a perfectly fine phone to have for young kids. But other than that, they should not have the internet until they're 16 years old. Personally. That's just me, though.
We used a Spectrum savings calculator before. I learned that since we're existing Spectrum Internet customers, we get a mobile line for a year.
Having a line for a year would be amazing.
Switch and save with one mobile line included with your internet service.
They're 16 years old, personally.
Therapy has always been such a scary idea to me because I simply did not know where to get started. I didn't know how to find my person. I did not know where to go until BetterHelp came in and helped me solve a lot of those problems. With BetterHelp, I got started on my therapy journey, and I actually went through a couple of different therapists to
In summary, we are simply asking American food companies to replace petroleum-based food dyes with natural ingredients for American children, just as they already do for children in other countries. American children deserve good health. Thank you.
Okay.
For over a decade, I have said the FDA is asleep at the wheel, and now I can stop saying that. Hi, I'm Vani Hari. I'm a food activist and author, a fellow MAHA mom, and I'm not affiliated with the HHS, just for the record. Thank you, Commissioner Dr. Marty Makary. Thank you, Secretary Kennedy, and everyone here at HHS that has made this swift action possible. Today marks the beginning of restoring the trust at the FDA and our regulatory institutions. Last September, I testified at the U.S. Senate about the blatant hypocrisy of American food companies selling safer products in other countries while selling inferior versions of the same exact products here in the United States with artificial food dyes made from petroleum. The outrage of American companies doing this spawned a massive grassroots movement to hold these companies accountable. 1,000 concerned citizens, moms, children, elected officials, health leaders from across the nation gathered in Battle Creek, Michigan last fall asking Kellogg's to remove the dyes they don't use in other countries. We had over 400,000 petition signatures to deliver to their headquarters, but they gave us the cold shoulder. They told us to get off their lawn. Secretary Kennedy took our unheard voices to the campaign trail and elevated them all the way up to President Trump. From the moment my kids were born, I have taught them the truth about artificial food dyes because our government was doing nothing to protect them from these harmful ingredients. Now we are entering a new era. An era where we don't need to worry about artificial food dyes on the frosting of a birthday cake, the breakfast cereals served at schools, our children's Halloween bucket or Easter basket, the chips and the sports drinks being served after a game. This was the effort of so many incredible people, many of whom are in this room.
So thank you everybody for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace. Mr. Poopy, where is my poopy Scooby? Where is my Mr. Where's my Mr. Poopy? Mr. City, hi, Mr. Daddy Rose.
But honestly, one of the reasons why I took this on was because it wasn't going to be easy. It wasn't easy to anyone to set up a petition and